Raise the Standard Podcast. Because the standard you set shapes the life you build.
Hey, aloha, everybody. Welcome to Raise the Standard Podcast. This is our third episode, and we've got a good one for everybody. Appreciate you hanging around. We'll be talking everything from soups to nuts, just about this whole idea of raising the standard in life, whether it's athletes or business, personal relationships. We'll have a great conversation here. My partner in crime, Coach Steve Richards. Coach, how you doing?
Great, thanks. You?
No, we're good. We were talking to Coach Taylor a second ago. Both Steve and I are looking out over the ocean from our viewpoints, and Coach Taylor is in downtown Greenwood, South Carolina. So he's got probably a better view than we got. So, Steve, go ahead. Introduce Coach Taylor, and we'll get this thing rocking and rolling.
Yeah, it's my privilege, Van, to have you on today. Van Taylor you only got to say his name and everybody understands where Van comes from and what he stands for. Welcome to the podcast, Van. How are you doing?
Well, thank you. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Yeah, I met Van some years ago at ODP in Alabama with a good mutual friend of ours, Gwyn Williams. And Van was the most humblest individual I think I've ever met to say how extensive his career's been in the game of soccer and education here in the U.S. And it goes back to what I was saying last week with Dave Simeone. Oh, by the way, Dave Simeone said hi when we...
Well, pass my regards on back to him.
When he said he was coming on, he wanted to be on, but I didn't think we had enough time with Dave on and you on. But anyway, he's the most humblest individual, and we met him in Alabama at ODP. And it's just amazing how humble you are, Van, with the intense career you've had right over the years, and we'll get into that. And when I was talking to Bill about you, it's like one of those things that if you're ever in trouble, that's the phone to pick up. Pick Van up. If you want any information, give Van a call. If you want to know anything about anybody, give Van a call. Van knows everybody. So anyway, welcome aboard, and I can't wait to get into the conversation, especially with one of my heroes that you played with that I looked up to as a kid growing up, that kind of put me in the path of what I've done.
Well, thank you for the kind words. And when you say watched me play when you were younger, what does that mean?
Well, Gordon Banks was my hero, along with Peter Shilton growing up. I watched him forever, and I remember sitting with my grandfather, watching the games and everything growing up. And it's funny because when I'm not if you know, but all my dad's side was professional field players, and my mom's side was all professional goalkeepers back in the day. And the day I came home and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm going to be a goalkeeper," he said, "No, you're not." There's only idiots playing goal, right? And I said, "Well, I guess I'm pretty decent at it, right?" And it just went from there, And it's been an interesting pathway.
Take after your mom. That's not a bad thing. And then Shilton and Banksy, two of the best.
Yeah.
Two of the best.
Would you like to just give a brief, I don't know if you can be brief, but like a little bit of background on yourself, Van, so people understand where we're coming from with this conversation, and again, emphasize, obviously your playing career, your coaching career, and now your business career with Lander University. So.
Be happy to. You can probably tell by my accent already that I'm not from the South. I'm living in South Carolina right now, but I grew up right outside of New York City in North New Jersey, and had a really rich youth soccer development. I played for a club team in Kearney, the Kearney Scots club. Also played for legendary coach Manfred Shellscheid. Those that are involved in U.S. soccer know that if you have a license, there's a number. And Manfred Shellscheid's number is number 1. He was the first coach in U.S. soccer to get the A license. So I was very, very fortunate to have some very, very good coaching when I was younger. And then went on to college. I played at a small college, Erskine College, and enjoyed my time there. I got the trifecta. I had a great education, received a great education, met my wife there, and then had my first professional contract coming out of Erskine. So Erskine's a real special place for me. And then I was drafted in what was obviously the North American Soccer League, the prelude to today's MLS. And I played at a time in the heyday with, players like Pelé, and you mentioned Gordon Banks, and Giorgio Canaglia, and Franz Beckenbauer, Johan Cruyff, George Best, Eusebio, and that list goes on and on and on. And just some unbelievable players who at the end of their career came over to help this fledgling league, get on the map. And so I'm really thankful for the opportunity I had. I played was drafted by New York Cosmos, and then traded to Miami and played there. And the team was owned by Joe Robbie, who owned the Miami Dolphins. And he moved the team from Miami to Fort Lauderdale, renamed it. And that's where I met Gordon Banks and had the good fortune to understudy Gordon. And then I played 2 years in the American Soccer League with a team called the Columbus Magic. We went to the ASL final that year. In fact, the assistant coach was Keith Peacock, who played his long career with Charlton Athletic. And then I finished up playing 5 years in the major indoor soccer league. As you know, in the early 80s, there was a void there in the NASL, and the game went indoor. And then obviously was resurrected with the MLS in 90, 91. And fast forward to today, things have continued to grow and develop the game here in the United States. That's the Reader Digest version.
Coach, let me start. One of the things that Steve and I talk about all the time, the players of the day, especially the college players of today, and from the time you started coaching and the hundreds and hundreds of players, if not thousands of players you've coached through the years, what would you say would be one of the biggest differences mindset-wise, standard-wise, players today from players 30, 40 years ago?
Well, I know we use these terms generation. I'm a baby boomer, and then there's a generation X and Y and Z. I think I coached for 30 years, and I've been at Lander 42. After retiring from coaching, I stayed at the university and have enjoyed my role working in athletics with development and raising money for scholarship and student athlete enhancement and facility improvements and so forth. But when I got out, I think the big change, this generation, obviously, and really probably more so since post-COVID, you think about technology today, you think about obviously the internet, you look at iPhones, you just look at the kids today in terms of all the other influences they have that can take advantage of their time. I mean, people think about the internet. We didn't get emails until the mid-90s. And yet kids today have grown up with technology. They've grown up. And so I think, this generation is, has lost a little bit of that relationship, communication, because of that disconnect with technology and the internet and social media. That's another big one. It's interesting. If I were to call my players and ask them something or let them know training has been changed, they wouldn't pick up the phone. But if I text them, they would respond to a text. And that's just the generation we have. I grew up in a home where you sit around the table and you had dinner and we talked. Well, obviously kids today are much more technology driven, and I'm technically challenged when it comes to that. I hand my phone to my 7-year-old grandson and ask him to fix it. And he says, Grandpa, I already showed you how to do that. Well, you'll need to show me again. And so I think today kids are a little bit disconnected. But yet kids today are the same. They want to be successful. And we can talk a lot about, what the life skills athletics teaches. And certainly there are a number of them. But I think that would probably be the biggest thing I've seen. And then I guess another one I would add, and don't want to sound negative, but what I call those hovering or helicopter parents. I think kids today have had so much done for them. A generation where when I grew up, we were taught, stand on your own, independence. And kids today are the same. I understand that. But I think with technology, I think post-COVID, remote learning, look at what that has done, since COVID. My wife is a school administrator. She's a superintendent of schools, and she'll tell you that since COVID, with that year of kids being out of school and maybe transitioning from middle school to high school, or even they were in high school and missed a year in the classroom, that there were some challenges there. I think those trickle down to athletics in terms of the communication with coaches and administrators and those types of things.
Van, do you think that, obviously hitting on that point, because obviously the trend changed now, the way we apply the coaching themes to the youth of today, and even the adults today. Do you feel that that's brought more the I into the sport rather than a team sport and a group of people, and more people are concentrating on me instead of being in a team concept?
Well, having coached on the college level, I see it on the youth level, certainly not as much to the extent you're talking about, but certainly on the college level. Look at what the NIL and the transfer portal's doing. Our men's basketball program here at Lander had a banner year. We went to the NCAA final, played on CBS Sports. Unfortunately, came on the short end of that. But since that time, we've lost 3 players that have left to move on to, bigger schools. We're a D2 school. And obviously that NIL and is something that has changed the game completely. Also the transfer. When I coached, initially you had to sit out a year, have a year of residency, then the player would be eligible. Then they did away with that and had a one-time transfer where that player could transfer one time and be immediately eligible, as long as they met the academic requirements. But, now they can transfer every year. There seems to be no loyalty. And again, we're at a small Division II school, non-revenue. I understand when we talk about some of the programs we talked about earlier, like the Southeast Conference with Mississippi State, Alabama, with the type of dollars we're talking about. But yeah, I think today, kids today, it's too easy to just, I use the word loyalty. I certainly understand the dynamics. I understand the money side, but sometimes kids are just leaving just for those reasons alone, and I think those are challenges. At least if I was still coaching, I would find that very, very challenging.
Yeah. Just to touch on that base, here in Hawaii, we've just implemented player reviews for the club that we're involved with, and it's amazing because I've got 30 players in my program, which I cover, and all the reviews have more or less gone about the mental aspect, the mindset. It all comes back to the mindset process with these players. That like the emotion, we all get emotional with various things. We're athletes, so you got to get emotional. You got to get worked up to go out and do it. Sure. But looking at the players, especially here on the island, because again, it's a different culture, right? And it's like they're struggling to get that mindset of the go get it, and how and why and when, right? It's like if they can't do it, they get emotional and switch off. Right, and it's obviously it's our job to get them ready for the next level going forward, and the program we're implementing here is obviously you don't know what's out there until you experience it. So we've started traveling a lot more. Do you think where would you say that would be coming from? Where the kids emotionally now with the to me it's common sense growing up because we played with older players. So we knew our pecking order in the locker room, which we mentioned with Chris Anderson a couple of weeks ago from the UK. that we learned to grow up in the locker room, and the players don't really get that experience until now they're more or less in college. What advice would you say, or you would give to a player to kind of grow up a little bit in the environment they're in?
Well, to the point earlier, just about the transfer portal and the NIL and all that, young people today, they're not as mentally strong in that regard. For that, I mean, failure is when you stop trying. And so, failure is a part of life. And kids, I think, need to learn how to deal with adversity. Conflict resolution. Look at our society. In the past, you just said earlier, when we were younger, there was a pecking order in the locker room, and we understood that. And if there was a conflict, we dealt with it. Well, kids today struggle with that conflict resolution, dealing with adversity, understanding that failure is a part of learning. Process oriented. They want everything today instead of understanding, hey, listen, maybe I'm going to set a goal. Yes, I want to compete to win, but I'm going to set a goal short term and long term. Short term might be just, I want to improve my passing percentage or accuracy rate. I want to get fitter, whatever the case may be. And I think today kids don't have that strength, if you will, to be able to sit down and set goals. And that's the thing about athletics. There's so many life skills that are taught through participation in sports, participation in athletics. It is amazing how often I get calls from employers wanting to hire former student athletes for those very, very reasons. They know how to work in a team setting. They know how to set goals. Communication skills, time management, conflict resolution, and that list goes on and on and on, as we all know, because we're all coaches. And so those are the life lessons, the life skills that athletics teaches. And I think to your question and to your point, that's something today a lot of the kids are lacking. Just being able to deal and have a mindset to say, hey, things are tough right now, but I'm going to be resilient. I'm going to stay the course. I mean, look at like Michael Jordan. We think about him is all the last minute shots he made. He will tell you all the shots he didn't make. You look at the likes of those type of players. Kobe Bryant. I read a lot about his career before he unfortunately passed, and a timely passing. It was amazing how much work he put into and crafted his art in basketball. So to your point, I think, a lot of kids today just it's too easy just to walk away. And again, I know I'm harping on this transfer portal and that, but I think that's lended itself to it to some extent.
Do you sorry, Bill? Do you find that the coaches that are coaching the players are lacking that as well, and they can't implement it? Do you think that they need to kind of self-evaluate the self as well, and instead of just teaching the X's and O's, actually teach a little bit about life skills?
Yeah, I think obviously we're all coaches and we understand player development. Obviously younger ages, the focus is on technical development. That's the foundation. And then you build on that with a tactical understanding of the game. And then obviously the physical aspect comes in. And unfortunately, the last one is usually what we're talking about, the mindset, the mental side, the sports psychology side. But I think with youth soccer, again, I've been away from it for a while, but I know, there's a lot of discussion now, and maybe you can kind of add to it. But the pay to play, and everything seems to be about the financial side. Not everything, but a large portion of it. And so some of the things we're talking about today maybe are missed or not addressed or fall through the cracks. But with young people today, they need those life skills. They need to be taught. Discipline and communication, all the things we just talked about. But not sure I have an answer there, but I think, you're spot on. Yeah, I think coaches need to address that probably a little more than, as you said, the X's and O's, as important as those are.
And obviously you've seen a lot of development over the years where you've been, you just said you was at 42 years at Lander, and it's like, What do you see in the students coming through today from just 10 years ago? What do you see that there's a big difference?
As a generalization, the kids are optimistic. They're coming in with high expectations. They want to be successful. Um, I think sometimes they want it too soon. And some of that is back to what we said earlier about social media and technology. If you think about it, before everything now, you can, with just Google it and get an answer, at their disposal is the same information that a CEO has now, other than what might be confidential within that business or industry. So they see the success of that person. And in my generation, hey, we have to work towards it. You have to kind of come up the ladder. Kids today, they want it tomorrow. And that's great. But we all know that's probably not realistic. But that's the great equalizer in education. You have upward mobility. Education gives you the opportunity. You can move different places. You can do a lot of things. And I think today we're seeing kids, I think, very optimistic, want to be successful, work hard, but I think maybe not as patient as we were, if that's the right way to phrase it. It's not a bad thing. They want it today, but how realistic is that? I think that's the question.
Who would you say was your role model that you kind of molded yourself around? There's a couple of people that you took a little bit from here and a little bit from there? Who would you say would be the guiding light that got you where you are today?
That's a great question, because I think as a coach, your players sometimes take on the personality of the coach. And the same with me as a coach. There were so many influences. My high school coach, Ralph Dugan, who has passed away, had a great influence on me, and he installed a love and a passion for the game. My youth coach, Manfred Shellshide, who I mentioned earlier, Manny, what a great teacher. In fact, the greatest teacher was the game, and he let us play, and we learned through playing, and he was a great influence. On the professional level, Dr. Greg Myers, who started at Davis and Elkins and won national championships, coached professionally with Miami, and then ended up his career at the Naval Academy. Had a great influence on my career. And then other coaches, whether it was Ron Newman, whether it was Tony Samoyas, I mentioned Keith Peacock, and others that you take a little bit here and a little bit there, and you come up with your own philosophy, and then you take the things that fit that, and then you go. So and then many teachers and mentors along the way. There's just so many people, because to be successful in anything, you've got to have people come alongside you. I've had to stand on a lot of shoulders to get where we are today, and I'm so thankful for that. So I mentioned just a few, but there are many other. We're teachers, pastors, administrators, athletic directors. When I came to Lander, Coach Finus Horn was the athletic director, and was a great mentor, a wonderful mentor, and along the way others. Our presidents, I've served 4 presidents at Lander University in my time here, and all of them, have given me sound and good advice along the way. So I'm thankful.
What would you say was the standard that they made you make between anything? I mean, standard of what it could be driving a car at a certain speed, but what would you say that the top standard, or the main standard that you hold yourself to, that you got from your mentors?
Yeah, I think in anything in life, being a man or being a woman, being a person of integrity, your word is your word. And I think that's important. And because kids today, and really no different than kids before, they'll see through that. If you're not, honest with them, they'll pick up on that right away. So I just think, be a man, or be a person of your word, be a person of integrity. Do what you say what you do. And I think those are lessons, I think, that, kids today, they're going to remember they may remember a win, but they're going to remember, more importantly, were you there for them when they needed you? And I think to me, and that's been the blessing of coaching. I mean, my players, 30 years later, I still have conversations with them.
Isn't that great? I love. Isn't that?
Oh,
I love
yeah.
that. To me, that's the best part about it. When someone comes and shakes your hand and says you made an impression in my life.
Now they tell a few big fish stories and exaggerate a little bit about you, but that's okay.
Hey, Bill, we lost you for a bit, man. Where'd you go?
Yeah, I felt like I was over in Tahiti or something, man. I couldn't get back connected, so we're all good now. One thing I was going to just.
What happens when you're in the penthouse?
Yeah. Well, one thing I was going to say, Coach, when you were just talking about the mindset of the student athlete and young athletes now, the vast majority of executives that I consult with, coach, work with, the majority, vast majority, and all different ages, all from around the world, and 99% of the time with my conversations and in the current culture, they want help with this. They want help with their mindset. It's not about, they know how to make money. They know how to lead for the most part, but it's this thing up here that is really giving them trouble. Belief system, mindset, limiting beliefs, all those kind of things. So I guess in my opinion, it's something that permeates our whole culture around the world, this issue up here in our brain. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, no question about it. You look at the life of a student athlete. Boy, they have to be good with time management. I mean, you think about their day as far as class, obviously preparation for class, in class, studying out, practice, competition, travel. We're in what's called the Peach Belt Conference, NCAA Division II, and we have some outliers. We have to go all the way down to St. Augustine to play Flagler. Great institution, but that's a 6-hour ride for us. And if we're playing on a Wednesday night at 7:00, and then have to get back late, or even spend the night, and then you still have to be responsible for that classwork, get back, and then have another match on the Saturday. The students have to be good with time management. So there is a lot of stress there. They're worrying about classes, and as they should. And let alone if they got injured, to your point, the mindset there, fear of failure, or, am I going to be able to come back off this injury? If I come back off the injury, how soon will it be? Am I going to be able to perform at the same level I was performing? Am I going to keep my, first team spot, or am I going to now be, relegated to a reserve role? So all of those pressures, all those things that you talked about, mindset, kids have to be very resilient. They have to be able to manage all those competing priorities, which are very important. School, and then, forget the social. I didn't even mention that. And then they have families. And then if you're an international student, just trying to, navigate, here we are, we're 6 hours difference. I guess, Steve, your family now back in the UK is what, 11, 12 hours? Yeah, 11-hour difference. Again, with technology, we're talking face-to-face and FaceTime. They can do that. But, when I coached, and before all the advent of the internet, it's tough to stay connected. So that's one of the things I always want my players to stay connected to your family. Make sure you're communicate to your coaches. Obviously in this case, we're talking about, the mindset. Maybe it's what we call the backroom staff, whether it's the trainers. Another big thing now, sports strength and conditioning. We have a full-time, excellent strength and conditioning coach here at Lander University. And that's another time, that has to be set aside each day for a student athlete's time. There may be study hall requirements. There's just, and I haven't even thrown in those that might have a work study or have to work to, pay for their education. Not everybody at the Division II level is on a full scholarship. So there's a lot going on. And I think you're right, Bill, that mindset, getting kids to ask for help too when you need help. They may just need somebody to just talk to. I may not have any
problem with the youth today as well, asking for help.
Say that again?
I think that's a lot of problems with the youth today, asking questions and asking for help. Actually,
yeah.
Coach, let me ask you this,
What do you-
and we've touched on it a few minutes ago. Um, I had a real good friend, head coach at a P4 school, send me an email a couple weeks ago. And he wasn't complaining; he was just sharing the dynamics of what's going on with especially Division One. But he was saying, and I checked it out, and he was exactly right. There was a little over 2,500 female soccer players in the transfer portal on that particular day. And is it because the athlete chose the wrong school and got in over her head, or is it? I'm not. I don't have enough. I'm not getting a fair shake. What's going on with all these kids that are just jumping from school to school to school to school? What's the inside story that you're hearing?
Phew, I'm not sure I have the answer, but I think you touched on it in part. I know, the early days in the rules, there was that one-time transfer, as I mentioned, and you could only transfer one time and you had to sit out. So, you had to really give some thought to that decision. Do I really want to transfer? And there are legitimate reasons. There may be, obviously, the most important. It might be an academic reason. Your major, or what have you. I have a grandson who's wanting to get into engineering, and we're advising him, make sure you give some thought to that, because that's a pathway that you want to make sure you're at the right school. There may be costs involved. Unforeseen circumstances with the family, maybe a parent out of work, whatever the case may be. And those are legitimate, and those would be reasons to transfer. But I think, and we're talking about the mindset here, and, raising the bar, if you will, setting standards, is that, we've made it too easy maybe for them to do that, rather than say, hey, you know what, other than those, particular reasons, hey, let's stick it out. Let's stay the course. Let's bounce back. Let's learn from that, whatever the reason was. But I think part of it is the culture. It's just been made too easy. Things have, and I think the NCAA is probably going to have to address that. Because now, where before it was just transferring, now, as you alluded earlier, it's now there's financial implications in all of this. I mean, you look at the kind of money they're talking about. Again, I don't think it trickles down to that extent, obviously, on the Division II level. But Division One, you think of it. I mean, it's big business. I mean, college education athletics already is, but this takes it to the next level, for sure.
Interesting. Steve, are you hearing anything about it? I get the youth league. Steve, by the way, Coach, Steve Richards came out here and he's tore Hawaii up big time. He's the hottest soccer coach on the island. So he's got the best under 15, under 16-year-old boys team, and he's got the little kids. Anyway, he's rocking and rolling. But Steve, what I was going to ask, even at the youth level, are you hearing parents talk anything about NIL or anything like that, even at the younger ages?
To be honest with you, the only thing we're hearing at the youth level at the moment is how and why coaches go after international players, and they look at it as it's replacing the American player. Whereas, the comments that we give back is, I've never known a good coach leave the best players on the bench. So what is the problem? You need to address the problem. Obviously, most of the college coaches are internationals themselves, so they're going to resort to their comfort zone a little bit and go after the player they feel, right? But the biggest thing is also, where do I play to get identified? So we spoke about it before. You got MLS next now. You got ECNL. You got National League. You got USL now. The parents are a little confused on where to place the player for the best. They look at it as identification, whereas I peel it back a little bit. I say you got to look at development at the end of the day. Who's developing your player to actually compete at the next level? And it's not somebody else's job to get you there. You've got to do the legwork yourself and do the research yourself and introduce yourself and all these introductions. How can you utilize your coach or your director of the club to open those doors for you? I mean, I mean, I do it all the time. I called Van. Oh, I called Van a couple of weeks ago and asked him, "How do you know this person? Can you write a letter of recommendation for me?" And I've been doing this for years, but the parents and the players don't understand how to do that networking to help them to step to the next level. So it's not about that. It's all about how do I get identified, and they're not looking in the right areas.
Yeah, I was reading a statistic where somewhere around 95, 96% of those that play in youth sports, including high school, will never play in college.
Mm-hmm.
And yet we're catering to that 4%. And as you said earlier, if we want to improve that, increase that, what are the things we can do at the grassroots levels? I mean, there should be other things more important. It's opportunity, education, mentorship, wellness, a lot of other things that we know come out of playing youth sports and participation in youth sports. But yeah, it's a challenge. It's a real challenge. But I've been away from the youth game for a while now, so I don't have my ear to the ground as close as I did. But I have a good friend who has a high school junior soccer player, and very talented young man, plays both high school and club. And we could probably have a discussion on just those two alone. But it's a real important time for him. He's trying to navigate this whole recruiting process. How does he best go about it? Video, campus visit, ID camps. He's asking me, and I can only really advise or help so much because, again, I've been away from it. But these are the challenges I think young people today have. Certainly, no question.
The challenge we've got, obviously, we're on a rock in the middle of the ocean, and it's like you're playing the same teams over and over and over again, and the way we've structured it here is we're hitting the development aspect of it and putting the players in an environment to be able to cope with that environment. And that's another thing that I don't think gets addressed enough. Like, I played my first reserve game at 15, 16 at Barnsley in the UK in front of, I think it was about 12,000 people at the time. I've never played in front of 12,000 people. And to be able to handle that, right, was to me, it took me about 30 minutes to kind of get into what's actually happening. And after the game, when I actually thought of what I just did, it kind of was a shock to me. So we're trying to put players in these top environments to play in now to handle the pressure of the game and the pace of the game and what's needed at the game, and not just to win, but just to compete in that environment, and how to handle it. And it goes back to that mindset again. Sometimes it's like, can you handle it? I mean, can I go and build a high-rise story penthouse like you're living in, Bill, right? And look down and frigging that far up in the air. Can I deal with that? Can I walk across that beam? And I don't think on the youth side of it, or these clubs are doing a service to the players, teaching them how to handle that pressure. That's without everything I just mentioned, just the competing at that level.
Well, one of the things that Steve and I talk about quite often is, the parental influence, the parents that appear to be much different in their viewpoint about the game and their kid. Drilling down even further, specifically, Steve and I talk about periodization, how important that is. The kids with their everybody wants to be in the first 11, and not that that's changed from 30, 40 years ago, but it just seems like some of the things Steve says when he gets to the field in training, or the weekend games where there's 4 games in 2 days or whatever, it's crazy. But Steve says he makes it a point to go and shake the hands with the mom and dad and build that relationship, because they're hawks just watching every single move that Steve is doing with the kids. So, Coach, maybe address that.
Yeah, I think every family is investing time, energy, uh, obviously finances, emotion into the game, and they want to see their child do well. And as you said, not everybody can be in the first team. And I used to do that with my college team. A roster of 25, only 11 can play. There's maybe at that time, the substitution rule was, not what it is now, but was fewer players on the field. So now there's a pecking order there, trying to get into the 18 that dress. Those that aren't dressing are trying to get into that. So it's a continuum. And kids today, I think too, they want things not necessarily easier, but they want it now. And like you said, if they're not starting, there's a lot of disappointment, and there should be, but they should work harder, be resilient, that mindset we talked about, and look at it as a challenge. I think some of that pressure comes from the sideline, the parents, again, the influence there. There's a old sports psychology video called Youth Sports is Winning Everything by Dr. Thomas Tutko. And it videotapes behind the scenes the sideline of parents at practices, at games, not the coaches, but the parents. And to your point, the influence parents have. We all, I'm a parent. I raised 2 boys and I have 5 grandchildren, and I know exactly what we're talking about in that regard. I think today it's magnified. The kids on the sideline, they should hear one voice, and that's your voice, the coach's voice. Steve, not the parent shouting to the player what they should or shouldn't do. Look at a lot of these young people aren't staying involved in the game on the officiating level. I mean, who wants to get abused as a 12-year-old, refereeing a game where the parents in that. And I'm not saying that's every time and everywhere, but these are some of the challenges we have with youth sports. And it's not just the game of soccer. This particular documentary I was talking about was with youth hockey, with baseball, and other sports. So, it's an issue that needs to be addressed. But again, you said it earlier, Bill, it's societal. It's a society today. I think it's everybody wants to have the success, which is great, but they want it today. May not necessarily want to, go the long haul. That delayed gratification, as we say. That's something we've learned in our generation. Hey, it may come. You'll be rewarded down the line. Again, I think today kids just, want everything, on the day. So those are just
Steve,
a few random thoughts.
Steve, are you seeing that with your kids that you're working with at some level?
Oh, I see it all the time. Again, I come on to this island, and there is a difference, right, in the way you approach things, speak to things. There's more of a, I wouldn't say prove yourself, but you've kind of got to come in and respect what you're doing here, right? And the culture here is very, you got to be respectful, and a lot of the parents at first, because my job basically taking over this program, I took a good foundation, but my job was to make the players understand tactical aspects of the game and increase the speed of play. How can they execute the technical aspects at a speed of play and in whatever tactical component we're using at the time. And we've done that. And going back to what Van said, the first thing I said, what's our 3 short-term goals and what's our long-term goal, right? Our long-term goal was to win State Cup, and we won State Cup. Our short-term goal was to be consistent every time we step on the soccer field, most of the players, right? And we've done that more or less. But we played a game last week, and the emotions took over, right? And they played themselves out of the game, because each individual player thought they had to do more, and they thought they had to take more players on, and the whole flow of the game was interrupted. So all this week we've been concentrating on controlling the emotions within the game. We haven't been concentrating on the game. Like we haven't been going from, okay, X's and O's, here we go, this is what we got to do. It's just understanding the emotions and how to apply it. Now, with the parents may look at it saying, oh, they ain't done much this week. They haven't been running. They haven't been touching the cone. Like you say, they haven't been touching the line, because that's not what we need at the moment to end up with our final product at the end of the month, which was winning the league, right? So we've concentrated a lot on that, and I actually drifted away because we was doing player reviews during the sessions as well, just to speak to the parents. I go, okay, and explain to the parents what we're actually doing, because the last thing I wanted the player to be is in that car driving home and the parent firing questions at that player, about, well, you ain't done much tonight. What's going on? They should be really coming to me. And I told the parents that too. If you have a problem, just come speak to me, But I think some of the young coaches hide their heads in the sand a little bit and don't want to deal with the parents. But I think it's really important to get the parents involved, and tone it down a little bit on the drive home or the drive to, and take it away from the player and concentrate on you as a coach doing your job.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it's not about you being the player being better than someone else. It's about you, the player, being better today than you were the day before.
Yesterday, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and I think that's what you were saying earlier about the process, both short-term and long-term goals. Obviously, you compete to obviously win. That's why they keep score. We understand that, but that's not all encompassing. There's so much more that you can learn by setting those short-term and then those long-term goals. One of the things I remember, Pelé, who obviously I regard as the greatest of all time, but certainly there's others that would come into that discussion. But he said that it's the love for the game, and he was a lifelong learner. So if someone of his stature could say, hey, I come to the field every day. That's my classroom. That's my laboratory. I come to learn, to grow, and develop, and become a better player, and grow that passion. If someone of his stature can say that, what does that say to you and I, the mere mortals in the game, that every day are just coming to get through the day? And so I think that's a good lesson for young people today, that, as you said, I love that word, process oriented. Set a goal, short term, long term, whatever it might be, and then see the results there. Don't compare yourself to others. Don't, I want to try to be better than this person. Hey, I want to be the better version of myself today than I was yesterday.
That's
and
what
hopefully in life we can do that.
Yeah, that's what we were saying to the boys with the reviews. They they tell you what they think you want to hear, right? And I go, hold on, why do you play soccer? And they go, because I enjoy it. It's fun. I said, well, is it fun at the moment? Well, no, because I'm concentrating. Well, peel it back a little bit and go out there and have fun, right? And when they went back out, it's funny because my assistant coach, who was walking off the field last night, he went, I don't know what you said to these kids at these reviews, but they came back into the session with a skip in the step. And this is a young 23-year-old, 22-year-old who's my assistant.
Sure.
I observed that,
Well, survey after survey will tell you, why do kids participate in youth sports? And the number one reason is because it's fun.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of that question, that coin, why are those kids leaving the sport? And it's for that same reason. It's no longer fun anymore. And so you're so right about that. That's the environment we've got to create.
Van, there is a question I want to ask you, right? And look at his face. He's like, uh-oh.
I know, I've already got, uh-oh, where are we going with this?
Here we go. This is a question I want to ask, because to me, it's such a privilege to have you on here, is how did you emotionally feel when they named the stadium after you at Lander University? Because every time I see your name on that stadium when I went there, when I was lucky enough to work there for a little bit, right? I had a shiver myself just knowing you, right? How did you feel when they told you that was going to happen, and then when you physically saw it?
Well, I certainly appreciate that. It's an honor. I'm blessed. Very, very thankful and grateful to have that name on the stadium. But as you know, Steve, stadiums and names and recognition, that comes and goes. I think the legacy we have as coaches is the influence we have had on the young people that have been under our stewardship. So to what we said earlier, to be able to, have a phone conversation or see someone you haven't seen in my case, over 30, 40 years, who I coached way back then when, and still be able to have those conversations and have those relationships, to me, that is the most important thing. So for me, yes, the stadium is a blessing, the name, but the legacy for me is that, the relationships I've built over the year, and that's the beauty of this game. It's all about relationships. I mean, some of the names, we talked about our former teammates. We've been talking about influence of coaches. There's quite a few teammates of mine along the way, and not only the players I've coached, but players I've played with. And there's a couple guys in the Harrison Kearney area that I speak to regular, if not weekly, back to my youth days of playing soccer there. So the game has been very, very good to me. I am so thankful and, just blessed and honored that the stadium was named after.
And the other thing is, you've been there, 44 years?
42. Yeah,
42.
Let's not get ahead of ourselves. 42.
What makes you get out of bed every day and go there?
How do I?
No, but what makes you? Because such a long time being in one location. Yeah. What makes? Well, I won't say make you, but how do you get out and go every day?
It's really easy, because I think you will attest to this. We're in a profession that we truly love. I mean, it's a passion for us. Yes, it's both our vocation and avocation. Yes, it's our livelihood. But, I love Lander University. I love working with young people. That'll keep you young, challenging every day around young people. As I said, I have great administrators here at the university. We have great leadership, have a great vision for this university. When I came, we were about 2,200 students. We're right now creeping up on 5,000.
Wow.
We had maybe a couple hundred student athletes. We're up to almost 900 now. We have, I think, 8 or 10 sports at the time. We now have 23 varsity sports and club sports. So, getting up every day and coming to Lander University is easy, because you work with good people. You work with a leader that has a vision for this university. We're seeing, everything from retention rates lowered, graduation rates increased, time to degrees lowered. It's a good time at Lander University. And so for me, every day, it is easy for me to get up and come to work. And I'm grateful for my time here.
When you left the pro game and you transitioned into college coaching, how did you bridge that gap? Was it just a natural evolution for you? Pretty simple. What was that like, that transition?
Well, that's a great question. I always knew that, I wanted to be involved in such sports on some level, athletics, not only playing, but as a career. I just read something recently about Jim Valvano, that when he was a teenager, he told his father that he wanted to be a college basketball coach and win the national championship. And the next day, his father brought him into the bedroom and then pointed to the corner, and there was a suitcase. And he told his son, Jim, he said, "Hey, my bag's packed. I'll be there when you win the national championship." And so during that time that he got into college and college coaching, he coached at Iona, Rutgers, and then eventually, obviously, at North Carolina State. As you know, as coaches, there's up and down years. And during those down years, his father would bring him back into that room and point to that corner and encourage him and say, "Hey, my bags are packed. I'm ready. When you win that national championship, I'm going to go there." So I think all of us need encouragement. All of us need those people that come alongside us every day and just be a kickstand for us. In my case, my wife has always been my number one supporter and cheerleader. And so I think, for as coaches, And Jim Valvano, he ended up winning that national championship. You know, the first person he looked for was his father. I know when I played college, my dad came and supported me. So in my case, I always wanted to be involved in athletics. And so when I was playing, I went through the U.S. soccer coaching schools. And even while I was still playing professional, I got the B license. And on the off season, I coached in the high schools and youth soccer. And then when I retired, I started from playing. I started at Lander, and then I got the A license, and then continue to this day, continue to learn. You know, every day I look for opportunities to, go online, find something that. And with goalkeeping, I'm a student in the game there. I'm always looking for, what's the latest in goalkeeping. Conversations with people like Steve and Matt Clark and others, are always just keeps you abreast of the game. So I always knew I wanted to get into coaching. And so that transition and that bridge between playing and coaching and getting into the coaching was very, very easy for me. It was just natural tendency, just natural transition.
What would you say, especially in the pro leagues, what was the most, or maybe several, especially from some of the legends of the game that you played with, some kind of something you heard in the locker room or on the bench at halftime or during the game? What was something poignant that just like you heard, you learned, and you kind of carried that with you, maybe, and applied it into your philosophy of coaching and playing the game?
Yeah. Well, Steve mentioned at the outset of our conversation today that people like Peter Shilton and Gordon Banks. Well, Gordon was my hero also, and not only was my hero, but I got the opportunity to play with and alongside him. I was his understudy in 1977 in Fort Lauderdale, and to your point, it wasn't that long ago. We were cleaning. My wife and I were cleaning out the attic, and there was a box. And there was some scrapbooks and things in there, and I opened it up. And there were some old Delta airline napkins with X's and O's on it, and signed by Gordon Banks. And I treasure that. I treasure those conversations on the plane or in the hotel, in the lobby, in the room, as you said, on the bench, in the locker room, where folks like him and others, where just the conversations and talking about the game and being a student of the game. And as I am today, I continue to be that. So I think, and I tell my players, I'm open. I'm going to learn from my players every day. It may even be learning patience, whatever the case may be. But if you're open to learning, there's something on an everyday basis you can learn, not only about life, but about the game. And so the game has been a great teacher for me and to me. And people like we've mentioned today, and I know you all have other that come alongside you, mentors that have, helped you advance your career. I'm grateful for all those people.
Steve, you have any insight into that as well?
Yeah. No, I was really, really lucky to, one, have my grandfather aside of me playing. But I mean, I had a good mentor when I first came to the States with Robbie Stoll. He kind of directed me, not always in the right direction in various things, but he gave me a really not good platform to build off when I came to the States. And I was always told, if you look the part, you be the part, and that kind of translates to everything that I do. The older I've got, I think the more patient I've got with my coaching, right, and my delivery, getting to know players a lot more rather than understanding the game, and understanding personalities and how you can get the best out of personalities. Because as we all know in our career, you've got these really good players that have got some bad personalities sometimes, but they're difficult to work with, but they're excellent players. So how do I translate what I want to that player? And again, it all goes to what's between the ears at the end of the day. How can I get the best out of my players How can I get the best out of what I'm doing? It's like we mentioned before, my son's into baseball now, you know, and I joke about it, but I love going to watch him play, even though it's like watching cricket to me. I kind of, like, oh my God, I forgot my phone the other day, so I had to actually watch practice for 2 hours, So, but I think that the biggest thing I would advise young coaches is you will change once you have kids yourself, right? And your whole demeanor, your whole approach, your whole attitude will change towards your profession, what you're doing.
It's a great point, Steve. There's a great author, Chuck Swindoll, author, writer, pastor, and he says that life's 10% of what happens to you, and 90% is how we respond to it, how we react to it, our attitude. And so, all of us here see the glass as always half full. It's never half empty. And so we take advantage of those opportunities to work with young people. And you're so right. I think if I got back, started coaching today, and yes, you want to learn the X's and O's and the strategy and the tactics and the teaching aspect of it. But I think the mindset, getting in between the ears, as you call it, and working with them and helping them reach their fullest potential is probably where I would spend more of the time today than I did when I first got into coaching.
I agree.
I think that's a great point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Coach, what was with your experience again at the pro league and the various coaches that you had, as a player, were you watching the coaches, and maybe not just in the pro league, but also your college and your youth league, youth days? Were you observing the coaches and their leadership style and how they built relationships or how they responded to, a win or a loss, or what were some of the cues you picked up that you applied to your coaching style and philosophy?
That's a great question. Obviously there's all types of leadership styles, not only in the business world, but in coaching. I see myself more as a sort of like a servant leader, guiding people, that kind of thing. I'm as competitive as anybody. Obviously I want to win, but at the same time, you got to keep it in perspective. And I think I've had some great coaches along the way that as we said earlier, I've taken parts from all of those and fitted into my personality, if you will, my life philosophy, how I view things. And I think, the biggest takeaway is that as a coach, we have a great opportunity to influence. And again, we're talking about young people now. I've never coached on the professional level, so I understand that's a whole different dynamic. It's in economics. I think we saw today, if you've heard the news, Pep has announced his retirement. I don't know if you saw that. Met with his players and made that announcement. Not quite sure where he's going, but you look at what he has done in the 10 years there. It's just phenomenal. I think I read he won over 20 trophies in 10 years, but you've got to look at that wear and tear on your, mind and the emotion. And I mean, it's a tough one. And so I know as a coach, my leadership is trying to raise young people, young men to become men. And I think if I can do that, create an environment for them to be successful in the classroom, on the field, and in life, and do only that in a small part, then I've done my job. Again, college coaching, what a great opportunity to work with young people and influence them. And so I'm ever so thankful for the time I had in coaching. Even though I'm not coaching anymore, I still get to, be around young people and help and guide them when I can. And so, I would say, to answer that question more on the leadership, yes, you're going to take it from all your different coaches. There's a time where you're going to put an arm around and a soft hand, if you will. And then there's going to be times where figuratively you're going to put a strong hand on. That's no different. And I think those times will bring out those different. But I think all in all, my style of leadership is being more about a player's coach, if you will, a servant leader, that kind of thing.
I think Steve is about that as well. As I watch him in our communication, And Steve, we never had this conversation, but just, I think Steve's definitely a servant leader. He says what he means what he says, but he exemplifies and lives the example and sets the standard. And those players have just fallen in line, and the parents have fallen in line. I'm sure, Steve, there's some situations I'm even unaware of, but it just seems like what you've done and how you've shaped that whole program now, it falls at your feet as a strong leader, to build what you're building right now. Really special out here in Hawaii.
Well, I think a lot of it, I even when I'm recruiting players now and we're sending them abroad to the academies, and it's like body language. I'm a big believer in how you portray yourself is how people, read you to start off with. So, like, during a game, we're not running up the sideline yelling and pointing and whatever, right? It's body language, and how do you present yourself when you win, and how do you present yourself when you lose? There's a lot that tells a lot about you when you lose. How your body language is and how you react to it, and I think, like I say, the older you get, the more even keel you get, but I watch other since I've been on the island, I watch other coaches' body language more than anything, and my philosophy has always been, if you're not going to say it in a classroom, you shouldn't be saying it on the field. Where some people forget that, and it just goes off wild. So yeah, if I advise anybody, I'd say stay, like I said last time, stay humble. There's always somebody out there better than you are. You're not
for sure.
a man. And ask questions and present yourself professionally. The way you'd want someone to present you.
Coach Van,
I think those are important life lessons.
Go ahead, Coach.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt.
I was just going to echo what Steve said. As a coach, you model for your players, how you respond to success, how you respond to adversity, winning, losing. And I think those are a lot, again, life lessons that we can teach our young people. I don't want to call them soft skills, but, today, kids going for an interview, how you present yourself, dress, Steve, you're all the gear, but no idea, huh? Talking about how you dress. But it's true, kids today, about how you address adults, how you speak. There's an informal and formal language of communication. Kids around themselves will speak a little different than how they speak around adults. But those are good lessons you can teach those kids. And once again, those soft skills, how you dress, how you present yourself, look people in the eye, shake their hands, respect for game officials, for, backroom staff, all the things we talked about earlier. And again, as coaches, we can model that. And you have no idea how many times we would go on the road with teams and get ready to leave a restaurant, and it might be the manager of the restaurant, it might be a patron of the restaurant would come up to me or one of the coaches, say, "Hey, your kids are so well mannered and polite," and the waitresses or whatever. And to me, that put a big smile on my face, because that's what it's really all about, making sure that you're teaching these young people how they're respond. And so, to Steve's point, kids are watching. They're watching what you say, but they're also watching what you do.
Yeah, I'm a strong believer that your team should reflect yourself. Whereas some people don't focus that far ahead of what's happening.
In the going back to the parent thing, I'm not trying to beat a dead horse to death, but I had a conversation with a high-level executive in a high-level company in part of my consulting this last week. And one thing he said to me, that he's been surprised over the last number of years, even there are times when parents show up at the corporate office wanting to talk to the CEO about their child who just graduated from college and got hired there, and they want to speak directly to the CEO. It's kind of like he was just saying his jaw drops because he's like, wait, when did this start? That's it. It's societal. It's part of the society. It's just interesting that those dynamics take place.
Yeah, we can call them helicopter parents, living vicariously through their child, whatever the case may be. And we're seeing that with the youth soccer. We're talking about wanting to teach kids to be independent, make good decisions. It's hard to do that when your parents are packing your bag for you, picking up after you. You're not having to be held responsible for any of that. And so not hearing that, I'm hearing this for the first time, that parents are going into the workplace. That's amazing, but it's not surprising because again, parents are running interference. They're solving all the problems. None of us want our children figuratively to hit the pavement. We want to be there to help them. I get that. But kids learn good lessons through adversity. And again, parents are there running interference before they even have a chance to, try to maybe figure it out on their own, to stand on their own. And that's where you help teach independence. I probably maybe too much the other way, when I may have been able to step in with my own children, enable them to figure it out on their own. And they now are able to stand on their own, make good decisions, problem solve, and deal with adversity in the right way. And so hearing what you just said, I was not aware that's not trickled down, it's trickled up to the workplace where parents are coming and talking to the child's boss. That's amazing. And I'm not sure Steve and I would respond very well to that.
One thing you can fill the blank in for me here, Coach. Steve did share with me about the last bicycle kick goal that Pelé scored. The rumor is that it was against you. Is that true?
He's still searching for the ultimate goal. And indeed, Pelé continues that search. Against Miami, he once again reached the heights, somersaulting through the air to score spectacularly.
Oh, it's a vicious lie. Steve's telling you a lie. I'm kidding.
Can you talk us through that?
That took place in it'll be 50 years ago in Yankee Stadium, and I was with Miami, and Pelé scored a bicycle kick. And the interesting thing about that is, fast forward, is somewhere around the late 90s. Pelé had come out with a product line representing Umbro, and they showed that video as a promotion to that. And I'm looking at that for the first time. Since that, obviously, I didn't see the goal on that day either. But I was looking at that for the first time, and I was standing there next to one of my former teammates. And if you watch it, not that he pulls out of the tackle or the challenge, but, had he stayed in, it might have hit him in the body or somewhere like that, and that never would have happened. And he jokingly said in front of these other people, he said, well, that's because I heard the goalkeeper say, I got it. But obviously I didn't get it. But just being on the field was a great honor, being able to play on the field with someone of that high stature and caliber, play. So, but yeah, that's probably 50 years ago.
And he's still got the photograph.
In black and white.
Well, I'll tell you what, as we start to wrap up, Coach Taylor, what words of wisdom? You've a legendary coach, not just at Landers, but I mean, within the NCAA, one of the most heralded college coaches. And I'm not just throwing that out. I mean, it's a lot of respect that we have for you. And now you're leaving a legacy as you continue on at Landers. What I'm calling on you to share some words of wisdom that you would like to, leave not only just with me and Steve, but with the audience who's going to be watching this. What would be your last words of wisdom or phrase that you want to share with us?
Well, coaching is an honorable profession. It's great honor and privilege to be able to be called a coach. In fact, most recently, a former co-ed at Lander who now works in the community saw me and called me coach and caught herself and said, "Is it okay if I call you coach?" And I said, the coach is reverent. So I'm blessed to be called a coach, and I'm still called that. And I'm thankful for that. It is a calling. There's no question about it. I'm a teacher. Coaching is teaching. My background is in physical education and exercise science, and I went on to get a master's in educational administration also. And coaching for me is just really an extension of who I am. It's both a vocation and an avocation. It's my passion. Similar to most people, at a young age, I knew what I wanted to do and I went after it. And I'm grateful for all the conversation we had today about all the people that have come alongside me, because none of any success I've enjoyed would not have happened if it wasn't for all the people that came alongside and supported me. So for that, I'm forever grateful, and I'm thankful for the honor to be called a coach.
Brilliant. Steve Richards, tie this thing up for me, baby.
Well, again, we're trying to hit an area that can help people. We're always here to help people. And like I said before, I think that the older we get, the more we reflect on things. What I would say is don't disrespect the position you're in. Don't disrespect the name of the coach, because you're setting a standard for the future, for these future individuals, and like we mentioned before, the greatest thing that I have is when people come back and say that you made an impression in my life going forward, not just in sport, but in general, and sometimes it's tough, because it's even with what we do, with what my wife does, we get to move around every 4 to 5 years. It's like, how much longer can I be doing this for? But then as soon as I'm on the soccer field working with the players and everything's ticking over, it's like, oh, I'm back in my 20s again, or I'm 27 again, and it's like, that's got to be something that's telling you that, it's something that you're doing. And don't get me wrong, it's not for the money, with most areas you're in. It's because you love it, and you want to do best for the players and the individuals in front of you, and always remember that, because if you're doing it for the money, you're in the wrong profession, right? You should be in the profession for giving and advising and mentoring these young people coming through, and I think sometimes coaches forget they are a mentor. It drives me crazy when I see these young athletes on the TV now doing stupid things when they're coming straight out of high school and get these multi-million-dollar contracts in basketball and football. That you're disrespecting everybody that's worked with you prior to coming through, because at the end of the day, you're a role model, and portray that role model. So,
yeah, love it. I think we covered a lot of angles based on the conversation. And if I had to tie it all up myself, it just seems like, I'm not trying to oversimplify, but it seems like it still revolves around this mindset on our life, our testimony, how we develop our life philosophy, how we interact with people. And so that is what I hope people take away is they listen to all these stories, how important that mindset is, and the standards. And that's one thing we didn't go in great detail today. We did mention standards. One thing that Steve and I say every time on the podcast is the standard is the standard. And when you start compromising your standard, you become weaker. So that's what I would leave with everybody. Make sure that you're holding your standards, hold the line. It's non-negotiable. And you're setting the direction of your life by making sure you're having the standards at the right level based on what your goals are in life. So, Coach Taylor, thank you so much. It's been a privilege meeting you, talking with you. I'm meeting a lot of fascinating people through Steve Richards, and we look forward to engaging with you again and on down the road as well.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity, and great to meet you today. And Steve, I will look forward to seeing you, I know, sometime in the near future, and it will be on a soccer field.
Hopefully we get you over to Hawaii for a week or so.
There you go. My bags are packed.
There you go. Bags are packed in the corner.
There we go. That's right.
Aloha, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Coaches, just hang on just for a few minutes, and we'll have a brief conversation. Everybody, we'll have another podcast next Friday with a soon-to-be named guest, which we're excited about. Take care, everybody. Aloha.